Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transforming Social Justice. I'm Megan. Here with me today is Justin. So, Justin, how you doing today?
Hi, Megan. Busy, but I'm doing great. Thank you. And I'm really excited about today's topic.
Yeah, it is a busy time right now at Us Squared, and it's even busier with everything going on right now in our country and really worldwide. There's just so many things that we're talking about that are coming up that are relevant to not only today's topic, but just social justice in general. So, what we're going to dive into today is ethnocentrism. Now, ethnocentrism is really an interesting concept that we focus on during the month of July because there are so many components of at least American culture that are centered in the month of July around our country. We have, for example, the 4th of July. So let's explain what that actually is. So we know why we talk about it in July, but Justin, what is ethnocentrism and how does ethnocentrism impact our relationships, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, so here at us squared, we define ethnocentrism as the discrimination, prejudice, or stereotyping based on perceived or actual nationality, inclusive of language. So this can lead to misconceptions like, for example, making assumptions about a colleague's competence or commitment based on these differences and not actually on their performance or them as a person.
Right. So it really centers on the idea of that feeling of superiority based on cultural norms, right? And like you said, it's inclusive of language, but it's inclusive of nationality, perceived origin, or culture. There's so many components that really, when we talk about the idea of intersectionality, it all comes together. There are a lot of pieces that people might assume are because of someone's culture, when actually they're part of someone's religion, or vice versa. So, with ethnocentrism, we really want to focus on the cultural norms of a society and what we assume to be normal, right? Even the word norms is something that we try to steer away from time to time because it alludes to the idea of normal and abnormal. It really leads to failing to recognize how someone's culture can impact their communication style, their values, their customs, and that can all result in conflicts and strained relationships. So, today we're going to talk about how we can address this in a professional setting, and really talk about what that looks like to support the rights of people from different cultures, whether they are based here in the US or not based in the US, but how we can kind of support ourselves in making sure that we're not making assumptions about someone because of what we believe to be true about their culture or their ethnicity. So, I know, Justin, you really on the team have a lot of good facts and you do a lot of the research for our team. Can you share some information about this?
Yeah, sure. So according to the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research poll in 2019, 51% of Americans believe that immigrants should assume an existing American culture and values. Additionally, 58% feel immigrants should blend into American culture rather than maintaining their own. And going back to the idea of the cycle of bias, where our first thoughts can manifest at the individual level and lead to systemic discrimination, ethnocentric views, like what I just mentioned, play a significant role in systemic inequalities and biases. Can you elaborate more on that, Megan?
You know, when you first brought that statistic to me, my first thought was, oh my gosh, over half of the US population believe that immigrants, their responsibility is to assume existing American culture and values. And that is so surprising to me because if you look at American culture, we are truly the country we are because of immigrants and because people brought their different cultures with them. I mean, if I relate everything to food, you know that, right? But if we just look at food, which is a huge part of culture, I know here in the US at least, when I want to go out to eat, I almost always go to a place that has food that originated from another culture. I don't necessarily like what we consider American barbecue or American bar food. I mean, I like all food, so I probably like it, right? But when I think about culture and I think about some of those pieces, we have become a much richer country because of different cultures and people bringing their different customs and different clothing. I mean, there's so many components of what we do here in the States that originated from somewhere else. And it's very sad to me that more than half of our country believes that immigrants need to adopt American values. Now, what I will say to that is immigrants who come here, I think it would benefit anyone, whether you immigrate to the US or you immigrate anywhere else. I think it would benefit anyone who comes to a new country to understand the culture of that new country. But to say that they need to adapt or blend in rather than maintain their own is extremely distressing. And I think that this impacts our economy as well. It impacts our businesses and our organizations because if organizations and companies expect or assume that all of their employees are going to meld into the American culture without bringing their authentic selves to the space, we're not going to be able to move forward on that. And I really believe that this ethnocentric viewpoint of you need to adapt our cultures and you need to assimilate goes back to what we used to hear a lot in the DEI world of our country is a melting pot, right? And the idea of everything needs to meld together. But in a melting pot, you lose all of the individual unique experiences and flavors and just components of people. So in the DEI world, many people switched from we're a melting pot to we're a salad with all unique flavors. I will say, as much as I love food, I hate that we keep equating DEI work to food, right? We as people are so much more than just individual flavors in a fondue pot or in a salad bowl. It is critical for us to acknowledge that different people's experiences can bring a diversity of thought and can ultimately bring a richness to policies within organizations and decision-making processes. And if we don't allow people to bring their diversity of thought into the workplace, we're just perpetuating the power structures and the societal norms that exist in our country. And I really believe that as a country, not only as individuals, but in our organizations, we need to honor those components and we need to honor the different cultural components that people bring in, whether it's their food, their traditions, their cultural components, their clothing. All of those pieces make us the United States of people who come from all over the world. We can grow together if we honor and value everyone's individual, unique, authentic selves.
So we talk about the statistics and some examples like you mentioned, but can you share or have you seen some personal experiences or observations with ethnocentrism?
Yeah, I mean, specifically speaking to organizations, there's so many
Yeah.
examples. And the one that I think is the easiest for people to consider and to make a shift in almost immediately, I know it's not overnight, but one of those components really is it's an intersectionality of religious imperialism and ethnocentrism, but it really focuses on ethnocentrism, and it's the idea of our holidays, right? Here in the US, we have federal holidays, which is when the Postal Service does not deliver mail, most government offices are closed, but those federal holidays are traditionally rooted in US based holidays, which I understand because we are the US and it's the US federal government that initiates those holidays. But then there are also others that are rooted in cultural components and specifically religion, mostly Christian religion. And what's really interesting, and I don't even know that most businesses know this. A lot of our clients, when I share this information, they're like, I didn't know. But people make the assumption that because it is a federal holiday, that organizations or businesses or schools must close on those days. And that's not actually accurate. It is not a federal mandate for all organizations, businesses, schools, etc., for anyone to adhere to the federal calendar that we follow in our government. So, for example, let's say Indigenous Peoples Day, which used to be referred to as Columbus Day, is a federal holiday. There are many schools who are choosing to have school that day and taking different days off. Organizations and companies can do the same thing. Here at Us Squared, we have a floating holiday policy. And a big reason for that is because we have people from all over the globe on our team. And it's not fair for someone who might be based in, like yourself, in the Philippines, or someone who's based in Canada or in Colombia to have to take the 4th of July off because it's a federal holiday here in the US. So, what we do here is we have a floating holiday bank. We have a set number of days that are allocated at the beginning of the year, January 1, everyone gets their holidays. And then people can take their days whenever they feel they need to based on their cultural norms or based on their personal preference of what they want to do to take a day off to celebrate their culture. And organizations can do this as well. Again, it's one of those misknown or unknown facts that our federal holidays here in the US are not required federal holidays or organizational holidays across the board. And as businesses, we can do that. And I think that's a clear example of ethnocentrism when we assume that people take certain days off based on culture when it might not be their culture. And I think that's something that we can definitely do. Also, I think there are a lot of companies right now who are starting to utilize offshore employees and support. I know Us Squared, we have quite a few employees who are outside of the US. And I think there's a lot of companies who are starting to do that, especially smaller businesses, because it just really allows us, and going into a virtual world, it allows us to expand and grow at a rate that really matches what we need at that moment in time. Now, Justin, I know you have worked in the BPO industry or in the offshore industry for a while. And I know that many people in the Philippines are part of that economy as well. Do you have any experiences that you could share with the group or with our listeners about what you've seen with organizations that hire people from outside of their country?
Yeah, so the BPO industry, the offshoring industry in the Philippines is big and growing even bigger, especially the city I'm in is one of the like centers for BPOs, and so I know a lot of people who has had that experience in the past or are still working virtually now. But I'd say with the kind of industry that it is, the distance, the remote structure of it, sometimes how it's built, we kind of lose human touch. It becomes purely business, and part of what we lose there is like understanding people's cultures. For example, if a company chooses to offshore in the Philippines, I know I've experienced this in the past that our holidays were the holidays of the country that the company is from. So we had to work our holidays. So that's why if you weren't gonna talk about our floating holiday policy, I was gonna talk about it because it's one thing that I really appreciate with working with a squared is that policy, because there aren't holidays that I don't necessarily celebrate or commemorate just here in the country or just with my beliefs. That's something I appreciate is, like you mentioned, I'm able to choose when I'd spend that holiday on my own, like in my own country's holidays or in my culture, like the things I believe in. So yeah.
And how does that ability to make that decision to spend time with loved ones or by yourself or whatever that looks like, how does that impact the culture and the interactions you have with your team or with people that you interact with?
I think I'd say everyone would probably agree with me that having that time available for yourself like boosts morale for
Mhm.
like for, I mean not speaking for everyone, but at least for me it does is having that free will to choose my holidays. I mean, I'm not on holiday like 5 days at a time, but like if I need a holiday, really boost my morale just knowing that I have that choice.
Yeah. And I think, thank you for sharing that and thank you for sharing your personal truths with this. And what we notice is, like you said, it impacts your personal morale, but I think it also impacts just overall organizational culture
Yeah.
and how people feel when they are truly seen, heard, welcomed, and valued. And some of those pieces with ethnocentrism is as business leaders or managers, we will sometimes make assumptions. That's first thoughts, right? That's a human interaction, that's a human response, is we make assumptions based on people's culture or what we believe to be their culture. Um, Another thing that I've noticed is with accents or with language. And I'm wondering if you have anything around that you could share, or if you've noticed or seen different people get treated differently based on their language.
Definitely, yeah. I think I've talked about this previously, or I've mentioned it previously, but I lived in Toronto for a bit, and Toronto, like you said, they also call it a melting pot. Toronto is very diverse. There's like little pockets of different countries everywhere, and I've definitely seen like different ethnicities be treated differently just from how they look and how they sound. Not sometimes they don't look their ethnicity, and then when people hear them talk, it like there's an automatic judgment that's attached to their accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen that as well, working with people all over the world, but specifically even here in the US. We have very distinct dialects within the US, right? We have the Southern drawl, and I've been told that I have the Midwestern accent, right? And then you have the Boston accent, and then you have the Pacific Coast accent. But people will make assumptions based on just a dialect, not even a language, but a dialect or the way your tone is. And it only exacerbates the situation when there is a language component as well. And I think that's critical for us as business owners to understand, especially as we continue to grow in a virtual environment, that if you have team members, even within the US from different parts of the country, there are different expectations and different things happening, right? I mean, right now in the US, we're in the summer, we're in July. It is very hot and humid in the Midwest. It is hot, hot in the Southwest, right? But just knowing the different dynamics, even within the same country, and how people are reacting to different events in the world are different in different pockets of the US as well. Again, it's all about lived experiences. And I think ethnocentrism, we need to be mindful that it's not just about a country, it's also about specific areas. If you believe that what you adhere to for your cultural norms are what is expected and you expect everyone else to align with that, then you're actually doing a disservice. You're allowing your prejudice and your bias and your discriminatory thoughts and your first thoughts to really dictate how you treat people. And it's important for us to acknowledge that. Now, I know here at Us Squared, we believe that our first step in doing all of this is understanding ourselves. So, some of those examples I gave were specifically to help people understand how they might be able to understand their own biases first. And we talk about how we need to cultivate that self awareness and go through some of those journal prompts to really understand where their first thoughts lie. Another piece we want to do is we want to encourage people to seek out diverse perspectives. So, seeking out different experiences, maybe going to different religious halls or going to different um, cultural centers, right? Practicing that empathy, practicing that active listening, understanding that you're willing to learn from someone who might be different than you are all critical steps, right? Now, those are really strong steps for individuals. We've talked about steps for businesses, but Justin, do you think you can give some specific strategies? I know that you've heard me talk about, or maybe that you've come up with, or that you've seen work for some of our clients in the business space of how they can really work to understand ethnocentrism and ultimately promote that inclusive environment.
Yeah, so organizations can implement JEDI, which is social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion here at S Squared. JEDI initiatives and training programs like reviewing and revising policies to mitigate biases, fostering a culture of open communication and respect, providing opportunities for cultural exchange. These are essential strategies, and it's all about breaking down cultural and social barriers, having open and honest conversation, and ultimately coming to an understanding so that we can start by actively listening and seeking to understand different perspectives, acknowledging bias, and fostering a genuine interest in learning about other cultures. So, working together towards a shared goal and celebrating cultural differences as strengths can help build more inclusive and equitable environments.
You know, Justin, as you're talking about that, it reminds me of our three-phase signature process that is so critical for organizations to consider. And that three-phase signature process really empowers our communities and our organizations to transform culture shock moments into awesome opportunities. And the three-phase process aligns with the acronym of AWE, AWE. So that first one of A, which is awareness, really helps organizations identify, do, like you said, that self-reflection, but also conduct an audit or a needs assessment for both qualitative and quantitative data to determine what those blind spots might be. So qualitatively, it's a lot of surveys and it's feedback from employees, staff, community members, constituents within the organization. And then quantitatively, it's utilizing assessments that look at numerical evaluation of someone's intercultural mindset. And specifically here at Us Squared, we have partnered to utilize the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory. And that is one of the quantitative measures that we utilize in that first phase of awareness. And in that intercultural development inventory, it really analyzes not only individuals' level of intercultural development, but it also looks at an organizational level of intercultural development. And it gives a numerical number based on their responses. And it really looks at the spectrum of someone being monocultural all the way through the spectrum to being truly intercultural, which is our goal of ethnocentrism. To avoid ethnocentrism is to be as intercultural as possible, to acknowledge and recognize that people's culture impacts how they see the world, how they communicate, and our perception of their culture can impact our communication with them as well. Then the second phase of our three-phase signature process is wisdom. And within wisdom, it's about providing that training and professional development to really fill in the gaps that are found in that first phase of awareness. So the first one, you have to know what you're looking for. You have to know what your gaps are. You need to know what you're doing really well in and what you could do better in. And then the second phase of wisdom is filling in those gaps. This is where most organizations start. They start doing training without really knowing what the needs are. So that's why in our three-phase process, we specifically start with that assessment component, that level of awareness. Then we go into the wisdom, like I said, with the training and professional development. And then the final stage of empowerment is truly allowing people to be seen, heard, welcomed, and valued. It's about moving to action. It's about creating the action plan and uplifting and empowering everyone within your organization to be able to do this work. And ultimately, our goal as a consulting firm is to work ourselves out of a job. If you become dependent on us to do this work, then we're not truly empowering you. So we really want to work people through that third phase. And those of us who are in organizations know that that's our goal with our employees every step of the way, is to empower them to do the work without us having to guide them through every step of that. As managers, as leaders, as business owners, it is our role to keep that vision at the forefront, but it is up to our employees to support that vision. And it's only through that empowerment that we can truly do that. So, again, that three-phase process of transforming culture shock moments into awesome opportunities, looking at both qualitative and quantitative data to identify the gaps, then address those gaps through training and professional development by gaining wisdom, and then empowering people to take the lead on those initiatives and to continue moving forward with those initiatives on a regular basis.
That's a lot of useful insight, Megan. Thank you so much. But sadly, that is all the time we have for today. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask Megan, I, or someone from our team to answer next time, please drop a comment or email us at info@plus2consulting.com.
Yes, and check out other episodes of Transforming Social Justice. We are available on Spotify and YouTube. And we have some special guests coming up on our podcast. And honestly, we're just thrilled to be able to continue having these conversations because it's only by having these conversations, by gaining that level of awareness, by filling in those gaps and helping people understand how they can move forward and grow personally and within their organization, that we can truly ensure a community and a society where everyone is seen, heard, welcomed, and valued. So thank you so much, everyone, and please make sure you're joining us for other episodes, and we'll see you next time.